Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. It's Q&A time, so anything goes. Go ahead and unmute yourself or type in. Fire away.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
Hey, Miss Barbara.
Hey there. I didn't see any hands raised when I jumped in, so I just wanted to ask what I was experienced this morning. Was that an overactive Mingman?
Yeah, it was a bit. I think what you were saying too, like in the email, like everything's kind of coming together and you're kind of, I can't remember exactly what was said, but physically and, your body's processing things, be it physically or psychologically, energetically. And so,
Yeah, there was definitely some agitation, but
yeah,
um
could be, let me just look at you a little bit more. I looked at you real quick, but I didn't do like a,
I mean, I don't think it was chords. I thought it
no,
just
it wasn't.
yeah, okay. I wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. You look like you're processing some things. Like the best, it's not going to be as literal as like, hey, you're processing that thing when you were 5 or something. It's more about like kind of the accumulation and the effect of experiences. And I would say the issue would be around like self-doubt or like a confidence of things that you're doing. Like confidence isn't even the right word. I keep going back to self-doubt. And you know, I mean, it could be a manifestation in the external world, but I would say that when practitioners are really working it and you're moving more inward, that's the thing. Like a lot of times when we even talk about spiritual practices, it's still like an outer manifestation of what like people are doing. And that's good for a while, but at some point it becomes more about not what you're doing outwardly, but more of like how you're moving inwardly. And even when we look at the aspect of will, a lot of times like I'll talk about will, but I don't go into it like crazy deep just because it can be an uncomfortable conversation, because a lot of times we look at it more as like, I got to get stuff done. I gotta pull it together. I gotta, whatever it is, like I gotta be more committed to something. And really kind of the idea of why I talk about it is there's like an outer will, and then there's a will about like turning inward. And the 4 aspects of the will that we usually talk about, for physical survival, emotional, mental, and then spiritual will, those are all like outer manifestations.
Okay.
And I would say, I hear all kinds of conversations and debates about free will and how we have it or we don't, or yada yada yada. But I would say the free will is not a manifestation of those four parts. It's about like going inward. And I would say that the issue of self-confidence, it's like you're being Marco Polo when you turn inward, like you're out, or whatever explorer from the old days where they were like, we're going to get in the boat, we're going to go across this ocean, we don't know what's on the other side, we don't know how long it's going to be, we're just going to go, and hopefully we survive. Maybe we find land, maybe we find whatever, but we're going to go see what's out there. That's kind of what it's like with turning inward. And um, you know, that's why it's good to have teachings. That's why it's good to have a teacher. That's why it's good to have, like other people, other practitioners who are doing similar things. But at the same time, at some point, all those things reinforce, but there is a little piece of it that you're doing on your own.
Mhm.
And when I look at the self-confidence, it's more about that than the outer world. It's more about like going inward, and it's not conscious how, like when you have interactions with your family, like there's things that are conscious or unconscious. um the journey inward, I think, is one of the most rewarding things that you can do, but also one of the ones where, like, scary is not the right word, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And like, this is a weird thing to say, but you almost do it like with no reward, right? And there is a reward, but it's not like a worldly reward. Like the reward is very, very internal, and it's some of the most beautiful things that I've ever experienced. I've been involved with turning inward like that. But when you bring it back to the external world, there's no reward for it. There's none. In fact, you kind of pay a little bit of a price for it. You know what I mean? And sometimes the experiences of the daily life can cause some of the doubt as you turn inward. And I would say the other thing with that is, we don't have any reference. And if it feels a little bit like the dying process, it's not, but it feels that way because you're literally just kind of going to the outer world. Yeah, well, I'm going to say goodbye for right now. Maybe I see you again, maybe I won't. And then you turn inward, and when you come back, you are different. That I was just telling Samantha, like, I had sleep and dreams last night that were like, when I got up, I walked around the house. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is our house. Like that, I think I live here. Like, and after about 5 minutes of it, I was like, oh yeah, I totally live here. But when I first got up, I wasn't super sure. Like I was, because I was just that far inward, and things looked familiar, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's the thing, is you kind of journey to this place or this realm, and then when you start to kind of come back, you don't really have a reference for a little tiny bit, and it sinks all back in kind of quickly. But when you really, really let go, you know it's, I don't know, I think you understand where I'm going with all
Yeah.
that.
So is some of that coming back, some of the body's reaction
Yeah,
to coming
yeah,
back? It's
that's um you know the body is not always happy that you're doing that process.
oh yeah.
It gets used to it, but at first it's like, excuse me, you're not listening, like, and so that's why it's good to do the symptom oriented stuff and treating systems, yes, it makes our life more comfortable, but when you do like really deep inner practices, you develop the skill set to stabilize the body in times where maybe you had a really deep experience. And there's been a couple of times when I was teaching, it was before it was on Zoom, but um, let's just say because of meditation and inner experiences while sleeping, I wasn't really that ready to teach the next morning. Like I had to like really pull my stuff together. And it was like an hour or two before I got, my feet under me. It's only happened twice, but one time I stayed in meditation. I woke up in the middle of the night and I go, oh, I'm gonna do a little quick meditation. And I stayed in this deep state for like almost 5 hours.
Mm.
And I came out of it because my body was shaking. And uh it was lunchtime before I really had pulled it together. And so going back to the brain and the nervous system are the things that get impacted the most when those things happen. So prefrontal cortex, like any of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all of it is shifting, adapting, freaking out, being calmed and soothed, whatever it is, it's not always the same. And so that's what it looks like to me when I look at you, is some of the prefrontal cortex is still thinking it's having like outer experiences when you go inward. And that just takes time. That's all it is.
And I will sit with your comment about the self-confidence piece. I know I'd done some serious work before the class this weekend,
Mhm.
and where I feel the hang up is a funny word, but it's the going, being inward and then dealing with being outward again, and
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
how to back and forth, and how to
Right.
like also show up in the external world authentically, but it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
I don't have good words for it, but
No, weird is really good.
it's
Yeah.
like you want to be authentic, but you're maybe not in a place that understands or supports that, or
Right.
and
And
so
you
it's
have
this
to kind
back
of,
and forth.
yeah, and you kind of have to communicate with people or interact with people like where they're at or um yeah, I agree. Like, so I think there's just a little bit of getting used to the back and forth is
Okay.
basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So, but like, you know what I kind of like for you too is, if you have some sandalwood, if you don't have some sandalwood, maybe some spikenard.
I have
Yeah.
sandalwood.
Okay. Do like a foot bath with, maybe a pound of salt and put your feet in and, maybe 10, 12 drops of sandalwood. And then, when it comes out, maybe rub like a little spikenard or vetiver on the feet,
Okay.
and do that like doesn't have to be a few days in a row, but maybe a couple times a week for like maybe a couple of weeks. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then even something like bay laurel, like inhale bay laurel, but on your temples, and you're not trying to clean anything or you're just trying to like bay laurel is very good from keeping the body from going in like a degenerative spiral, you know.
Hmm.
And so it's not that you're degenerating there, but like sometimes the nervous system can push back enough to where it starts causing like symptoms. And so It just helps to like normalize things.
Okay.
Like it keeps the body from going that direction. Like bay laurel is one of the better single choices, but like bay laurel or myrtle or ravensara, any of those would, even eucalyptus citrodora, you inhale it and with awareness on the temples, and it's kind of calming and soothing, but more than anything, it's like stabilizing. Like it's just kind of stabilizing to the body. Rosemary verbena would be another one as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have a question about the pound of salt in a foot soak, because my head wants to say, well, it's much a stronger concentration than if you put a pound of salt in a bath.
Right. Yeah.
But you still
Yeah.
use a pound in the,
Yeah. You still use a pound. Yeah. You
like I don't
really
even
want
know that it would dissolve.
right. Oh, it won't. Like you'll like I usually pour it down the toilet and then flush it. You can still pour it down the bathtub drain or shower drain, but the salt helps to break things out and then suck, helps to suck the energy out. And so you're wanting like a very concentrated amount because it's gonna pull a bunch of stuff out of the body, through the bottoms of your feet, and you want like more so that it can handle it. Yeah.
So it's proportional to the body, not
Yeah.
proportional
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And go ahead, Lolly, then Troy.
Hey, Lolly.
Hello. Okay, so many things. The salt, now that you just talked about it. So the pound of salt for the foot bath, you would use it only for that specific thing, or would you use it each time you're actually doing a foot bath?
No, each time you do a foot bath. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's more
Yeah.
salt than okay. So each time you actually use
I mean, you can
that.
do less, but when you're pulling out, like when you're doing your feet,
Makes sense.
it's like a salt bath is pulling it out from your whole body. In the foot bath, you're pulling out that energy from your body, but through your feet. And so there's not as much water, but you're still moving the same amount of energy like into that area. And so you want more salt there so that it can disintegrate or absorb the energy that's coming out so that you don't just kind of pull it out and then absorb it again.
Okay, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. And okay, it was interesting you mentioned the experience of like being in your house and not sure like what's I get that sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah, sure.
yeah, I actually live here. I need to remind myself of that. So I'm glad I'm not the only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, no, it's especially when you're doing meditations. I mean, I had this really embarrassing time where I think I've shared it on the Zooms once or twice, where like I had been doing really deep meditation and then I was out in public and I had to go to the bathroom and I had to stop and go, wait, am I a man or a woman? Because
Oh.
my head was like, I was so expanded. And then I was like, yeah, I'm a man. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm a man, because like I just come out of meditation. I was like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. And, kind of embarrassing, but it happened. It wasn't like this big, long, drawn out process. It was like a 5-second little thing. Like, wait, what
Yeah, like just
yeah,
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 rewire the mind back again.
right.
Okay, so then since you mentioned bay laurel, I'll ask about that really quick. So I actually got that because you mentioned I asked something about my teeth and you mentioned that and I got it. But last night I realized that it's really amazing dealing with lymphatic system, I already knew that, but dealing with mucus.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
apparently that's I don't know why I got this thing going on last night and I did that. So I did it internally. I put it on my feet. I gargled with that.
yeah.
I seriously like it's like my new best friend now.
Right. Yeah.
So what I was wondering is what would be the difference between the bay laurel and something like inula? That's also really good for
inula is a
mucus.
little bit stronger for just like breaking up the mucus, but bay laurel is still very strong. But I would say the thing with the bay laurel is It has more antiviral and more antibacterial properties to it. It is one of the better, like, broad spectrum antibacterials. Like you would use it to treat staph and strep and lots of different
Mhm.
kinds of bacterial infections, along with certain kinds of Lyme and things. And so there's that component, and that aspect of decongesting, like lymph nodes and toning to the lymphatic system, is that even in some of the areas, like say in the sinuses or in the lungs, like a lot of times some of the issue is like the body's not detoxifying like it should. And so um, that idea of using something like bay laurel to it opens up the chest, it does things for respiratory function, but it does so many different things. And it also, it's one of the oils that kind of on its own shifts you into a healing state. It does start to stimulate like intuitive processes, and pops you out of that repetitive component that's associated with sympathetic nervous system activity or intellect, the lower mind. And in certain traditions back in the ancient times, they would use it even going into ceremonies and things like that. I mean, there's a reason why they used to make wreaths or crowns out of the leaves and things. Is It's actually quite activating to the crown for what it is. And so it does a lot of different things.
Okay.
I'm even playing with this like blend for just, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like kind of a way of not degenerate, like the mind being in a degenerative state where maybe there's anxiety or a little bit of a phobia or not depression, but just like stress thinking, repetitive thinking, all those kinds of things. And
Mhm.
normally I would treat it like in these ways with some of the other oils, but like I started looking at the idea of using like things that either have what they call like a terrain treatment, which means it's very toning to a bunch of systems, but it doesn't necessarily like address a specific like symptom. You're just trying to make the environment work better. So there's that component, and I was looking at it from the point of view of um, using it like things that are antiviral. And because we think of viruses as like impacting the immune system, but one of the issues is that viruses also impact the nervous system. And so combining the approach of using antivirals, but how these antivirals target the nervous system and then potentially impact um, like brain function or mental functions is kind of the goal. And basically, like not just trying to diminish the degeneration or degenerative spiral in the mind, but in the body too. You know how like just sometimes like no matter what you do, your body's just like ugh, it's in this like weird downward spiral, and you try to pull out of it, and after a little bit of time it stops. But like how can you stop it? Like try to stop it on a dime. And the more that I play with the bay laurel, traditionally, like you take something like OCD, for example. Like traditionally, we've used things like if you use like Palo Santo with somebody who has OCD, um, there is usually about a 30 to 70% reduction in symptoms just by them inhaling it, putting it on their wrist, and taking a couple drops a day. They'll have less drives for for that. And then so then we have done times where we augmented that with mugwort and have them like open up the arms and legs and inhale it on their brain. And again, the idea is to kind of bring them out of the reactionary actions and automatic behavior and thinking so that they can kind of make more choices rather than just being driven to do the repetitive actions. And that's helpful, but I think bay laurel could be right up there with Palo Santo in the treatment, be it that it's combined or they're used separately. But I think that there's a potential to reduce the symptoms even more substantially with like OCD. And the thing that we think of like fears and things like that is just being very straightforward, but there's like levels or degrees of fear. Like even anxiety is a kind of fear. But one thing that we don't ever really think about or talk about very much is sometimes the fears are a little bit of like a kind of a form of a paranoia. And it's usually either you don't feel safe or you've had past experiences and you're not like overtly like, something bad's gonna happen, but you're like your antennas up, like, okay, is something going to happen here? Is there going to be another shoe dropping? Like whatever. And I'm not sure that that's exactly paranoia, but it's got a paranoia vibe. And it's usually a byproduct of past experiences. The other issue with kind of the low grade paranoia is there's actually medications that people can be on that actually stimulate that. And it's just a byproduct of whatever the medication's doing. And so I've had a few people where it was medication induced. And so to be able to go through and treat that so that they can either stay on their medication or if it's because of past experiences or whatever that might be, is how to help somebody to feel safe or to feel that was, yes, that was in the past, but that's not right now. And as much as you try to talk to somebody and tell them like, hey, this is what's going on, there's a little bit of like a trigger that's happening. It's not that their brain just like thinks that for no reason. They're like, if you look at the instinctual response, the emotional response, and then the mental response, there's a little thing that gets triggered and then it just goes up the pipeline. And so like how do you reduce like those triggers that potentially cause that? And as much as we nail some of the time, like I think it's always good to always be like searching for different ways to reduce that, because people have very different personality types. People have different past experiences, and it's not always going to be super straightforward. And so we try to do things like in a template as much as we can, but the more you kind of experiment with the different ways of trying to address those kinds of issues, like the more you kind of learn and be able to differentiate like what a person might be going through, might be triggered by, or you know sometimes it's still just the memory of things in the past, sometimes it is still external situations. And like if you look at it in the workplace, there's management styles that their intention is to trigger that response. Their intention is to trigger like a little bit of a paranoia and a little bit of a fear and a little bit of, kind of a low grade threat to maximize efforts in the workforce. And, there's definitely management styles that they don't think of people working there for a long time. They try to get 3 to 5 years out of somebody and then burn them out and then move on. And a lot of how that management style is based on is it's like fear driven and a little paranoia driven, to maximize performance from somebody. And so how do we address that, you know, is really what it comes down to. And, you know, trying as many different pieces, you know, like in the medical aromatherapy circle, you know, there's things where you target the immune system or you target the nervous system, but there's certain oils that are what they would call like a hypnotic. And it doesn't mean that you inhale them and you're hypnotized. It means that they have a potential of shifting how a person thinks with an exposure, right? And it doesn't mean like, oh, you're going to think the way I want to think. It shifts you out of like a repetitive thought or an obsessive thought or a kind of thought that's anxiety driven, and it allows for intuition to kind of come in and play a role and maybe help resolve the situation or just help the person to feel a little bit more comfortable. And it kind of gets them back to more of their true nature rather than the stimulated or manipulated response in some of these situations. And so bay laurel does that. Basil can do it. Sometimes even eucalyptuses can do that. But then the fancy stuff like tuberose and lotus and ginger lily and osmanthus and narcissus, you know, those are all very strong hypnotics. And you know, that's why like you inhale tuberose and you're like, oh, why does this feel so good? It's because you just shed the stimulation from the environment and you get to feel more like yourself. Like, you know, you're literally letting go of the external stimulation of the day or the conditioning of the day. Aloes also does that. Poplar doesn't. You know, they all kind of have their variations that they do, but they all kind of do that. And so, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that. That connects to so many things because even just in the last week or so, or even in general, I've been either talking to people or treating people and everything has to do, I mean, even if it's physical stuff, everything has to do with some kind of trauma. So I have one with sexual trauma, I have one with PTSD because of past trauma from a relationship. Another one that's dealing with something major that I still need to break down physically, but also connects to a workplace. And the management, it's interesting. Like it's pretty much like entertainment industry would be like a very much some of the departments, some of the jobs would be very much like that.
Right.
Stress and fear and yeah.
Perfect example. Either you perform, do what we want, or you're going to go away and not work. You know, like
exactly. So,
you know.
And that's the thing. So many of these things are really sitting on that. And as I was breaking down all of those things, I'm like, okay, how do I address that? Because there's so many different options and I have to treat so many different things that are sitting on that. So thank you. That was a good.
Yeah, good.
But then, okay, so then I'll come back to my questions in a second. But if I'm looking into, you mentioned OCD. So how would you do, so it's a few things. One, how would you treat like OCD? It's still going to be different than ADHD. It would still be different than treating PTSD.
Yeah.
So
they're all different. They're all different.
Right.
Yeah.
And the difference would be
OCD, like, so you're dealing with obsessive thoughts, which are repetitive thoughts.
Right.
And then the compulsion to act on those thoughts or the fears or anxieties. And so you know, the thing with that is like being able to break them out of that cycle of the repetitive thought or the compulsion to act on like a fear or anxiety and so Palo Santo is very good for, you know, it helps it helps a person to like shift or transition out of the thought process and the state that they're in, and it helps the intellect to like let go of what it's thinking about in the moment, so that like the mind kind of lets it go, and then because it let it go, the mind starts to shift into more of the intuitive state. And so like OCD is a very good example of, if you can get them in an intuitive state, that OCD really ceases to exist. It's not that it makes it better. Like if even if you get like low grades of intuition, it will start to diminish it. But if you can get them in a really deep intuitive state, it just disappears. Like it will literally go away. The issue with OCD is people are usually like very wound up in the thought process, that the intellect has a hard time, and the nervous system, especially the sympathetic part of the nervous system, has a hard time letting go of it. And so Palo Santo is very good for helping to break that cycle and transition into the intuitive state a bit. And then, mugwort helps you to transition into the intuitive state. I always found, because I tried doing them in reverse, like doing the mugwort first, and the mugwort always seemed to work better after they were using Palo Santo. Like it would kind of help when they were flipped, but it worked better like after Palo Santo started doing what it was doing. And could be in a session, it could be that they used the Palo Santo for a week or two and then integrated and augmented with mugwort. But the thing with bay laurel, like if you think about it, like you feel good, your body feels good, your body is feeling better in particular areas, you don't have pain. But part of why bay laurel feels so good is what it also does to the mind, and you are able to shift out of that place or that state, because we think of it as like I'm thinking something, but really we're thinking something because of where the mind is at, like the state that it's in. And so at first you're kind of wrestling with, okay, let's break up the thinking. But like as you break up the thinking, it's like, okay, now let's walk over here to the park and get out of this stressful environment and get to the park where everything's a little quieter and a little bit more peaceful. And you don't have to think about the things that are in the office, you know it's like a version of that, but internally. Like you're trying to help a person like walk out of where they're at internally and go to that place that's a little bit more peaceful in their mind. So that's why you see like in new age things like go to your happy place, or like as silly as that is, like I don't know that you could do it that way, but the idea is there. And that's the idea of even like meditation, where you activate the heart, you activate the crown, you're blessing. Part of what you're doing is you're changing the frequency of where your mind is at, so that you have the expansion, you come back in, you don't quite land in that same place where those repetitive thoughts or obsessive thoughts were. And so like I think I've talked about this here. Like we do private groups and things too. So I always get a little blurry on who I've talked to and what I've said. The the thing, like when I would work with autistic children and Down syndrome children, and sometimes they were both. And so what would happen is, the ones that I were seeing, they had gotten abused some way somehow. So we were trying to get them off medications and things. And so they would get triggered just by like a sound or not even a person, but somebody who looked like the person who maybe abused them a little bit. Or like one child, it was if they heard a siren, like if they heard a siren, they would just lose their mind, right? And so one of the things that I would have them do, like the parents, as I would go, get a little like photo album. And you know, now you can do it with your phone, but this is how long ago this was. Like go get like a little photo album and like, you know, birthday parties where they were having fun and their time at Disneyland, or, you know, a family picture, or, you know, whatever it is, the family dog, and make like a little photo album. And when they get triggered, make them look at the photo album. Make them go, remember the birthday party? Remember that time in Disneyland where Mickey Mouse came up and gave you a handshake? Remember and what you're doing is like kind of that same idea as meditation, is you're pulling them out of that place that they're in, and you're making them literally go to their happy place. Like you're making them manually go, remember that time. And it's like a different inner environment. And then as you're in that inner environment, the thought processes completely change. Like it's not like you're having to wrestle with anymore. It's just kind of like, if it's only shifted a little bit, you can go, oh, it's just right over there. I can still feel it. But if you shift them enough, it's just kind of gone. And so it's the same idea with PTSD. You know, PTSD is, there's different kinds of PTSD. And I would say the term has been very overused. Like, so sometimes what people are calling PTSD is not always PTSD. But let's just talk about
Yes.
PTSD. So, you know, you're dealing with brain fatigue, for one. You're dealing with super, over, or hypersensitive, hyperreactive sensory nerves. So using sage on, especially Spanish sage, like on the, I mean, all the sages will work, but Spanish sage on the body calms the sensory nerves, but it also treats the brain fatigue. And so it acts as a neuroprotective. And so when you do that, you're making the body less reactive, just right there. Like you're just calming some of the things down that trigger the person. And then, you know, the combination, like it's still on the site, I think, where you know, I did a big thing with PTSD for a while, some with oils, but like way back in the day, we were doing it through a bunch of different approaches. But it's like you do tarragon, then you do rue. You could also supplement, instead of rue, you could use St. John's wort, but I usually used rue just because it was like cheaper and it was easier to integrate it into whatever situation. And then the third being hyssop, you know, so you're calming down the potential for shock. And even if the event was 20 years ago, still when they get triggered, they're still in this like kind of low grade shock, right? So the tarragon calms that down. Then the rue, you know, it puts you in a sympathetic space, but it helps you to like let go of the person or the event. You know, same with St. John's wort. It will help you to like let go of you know, because there's a cord that forms with that. And the reason that those work is they start pushing you into a parasympathetic state, you know, and in the parasympathetic state, you won't hold on to it, right? And sympathetic or fight flight, you really hold on to it. So you're starting to shove that person into a parasympathetic state. That's why rue works for cutting cords. It's not that you inhale rue and a big hand comes down and goes chop. It's just you go way deeper into parasympathetic and they just little fall away. Like they just fall away. And so even MCKS talked about like there will come a point where you don't have to cut cords because, you know, the nervous system has been refined enough. And then you go to hyssop. So when you're deepening the breath and you're loosening the spine when you use the hyssop, but hyssop diminishes the tendency to absorb negativity from the environment and from people, you know, or situations, whatever it is, just diminishes the tendency to absorb negativity. And so then the final one, you're utilizing Splendor. And Splendor was made specifically for PTSD. Like I use it for a bunch of other things because you're targeting the limbic system, but it basically like kind of calms and soothes the limbic responses, which would be tied to the triggering. And in times when we would be doing therapy in person, sometimes I wouldn't even use all four. I would just give them Splendor, and that would help resolve it. Didn't resolve the brain fatigue, but like then you start working in the sage and all those pieces, and you can go through and resolve those aspects of the triggering, the reliving, the anxiety, the reactionary responses, and the hypervigilance. Because with PTSD, there's a lot of hypervigilance, and so these days sometimes people will use PTSD about things that they just don't like. Like, I got triggered by that, I'm really upset by that, and it's not that they're living
Yeah.
anything, they're just like, I really don't like that. Like, that's not PTSD. That's it's that you don't
Yeah.
like it, like I get, or it's upsetting, but that doesn't mean PTSD. Like PTSD, like when you see somebody with PTSD, it is obvious. Like, it is very obvious they have PTSD. And
Yeah.
going back to
So
like football players, like part of their PTSD is the body has been traumatized to the point where their brain just gets reactionary. And so they might not be reliving like, oh, all these guys are trying to tackle me and hurt me or whatever, but the body's been hit enough to where any little thing starts to trigger them. Like that's like a different form of PTSD, but it's still PTSD. Yeah. And so again, that's usually due to brain fatigue and hyperreactive and hypervigilant, um, hypervigilant sensory nerves in the body. And so again, calming all that down makes it easier to treat if there's some underlying thing that is a potential trigger. But that's why, like, if you can get somebody to sleep when they have that issue, I can get really deep sleep. You hit the anabolic state when you're sleeping. So your nervous system, your immune system, the endocrine system, and the muscles in the body all reboot in that anabolic state. And to be able to hit that, you have to hit a deep enough level of rest and repair. And so in that, the mind also just lets go of stuff. Like, if you can get to that state where you're in an anabolic process, you're in that time, the mind just lets go of stuff. Like, it does not hold on to things, that especially things that were traumatic. And so the body will reboot in ways with really deep sleep that we can't even fathom how much of a shift that is with the waking mind. Like, it's so much greater than we really even perceive. But it can be hard getting somebody there. Like, that's not
yeah.
always an easy place. And so yeah.
And basically so then all of those oils, so the tarragon you can do internally as well.
Yeah.
Rue and his stuff you do inhalations.
Yeah. The only one I would do internally there, like rue, don't take rue internally. St. John's wort you could, but here, like it's better to inhale it. The tarragon can be inhaled and taken internal because it does keep you in a little bit more of a parasympathetic state. And the tarragon is so soothing that we talk about it for like shock, but it also can help regulate imbalances in between fight, flight, and rest and repair. And so it can be very soothing to that. But like, I went through this phase, this is like, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, that I would do very deep like meditations and blissful meditations. And when I would come out, I started rubbing tarragon on my feet. And I mean, it was just like, because you're like in this bliss state, and then you come back to your body and you're like going, crap, it was just a
Mhm.
dream. Like, you come back in your body and then you're like, I have all those things I got to do this week, and I got all the and my body hurts, and all those things. And so you would have this like nice, or at least for me, I would have this very nice blissful thing. Then I'd come back in my body and I'd almost have a little bit of a reaction. Get the body was banged up, and I was having stress at work. And so yeah, I tried a couple of different things. And I tried like flower essences. I tried all kinds of things, and then I was just like, I'm just gonna go old school and rub tarragon on my feet. It was amazing. Like, it didn't help me before, but if like as soon as I came back into my body, I'd kind of move around and I'd rub tarragon on my feet, and I was like, oh, God, I feel so much better. And I felt great coming back from the meditation, but there was still a little bit of like back in my body, ouch, like, like kind of like that. And it wasn't
Mhm.
always physical pain, it was just, but that's what tarragon does for you in,
Yeah.
in these situations. So inhaling it a lot, or putting a couple drops in water and take it in internally,
Hmm.
very good for
Yeah.
that. Very, very, very good. Yeah.
And and then basically situations that call themselves PTSD, even if they're not really PTSD, but it's like a reactionary, like it's
Yeah.
triggers basically. Then you can use similar things because it's if it worked for more, because it's still rewiring the brain in a way that it's not going to be
Yeah.
triggered by
So,
different things.
I would say sometimes when it's not like true PTSD, I'd almost go back to treating it like a little bit of a OCD thing. And it's not quite OCD, but um, there's a thing with like physical pain. Like if you're in enough physical pain for a while, like say your tooth hurts, and after a while, like the first couple of days, you're like going, okay, my tooth hurts, but as your tongue keeps touching it like a couple of times a minute or whatever, or you're just like, okay, I have time to rest. Huh? What about that tooth? Like, and you're not generating new information, but your tongue, like you almost get a little obsessed by it, right? And so with physical pain, part of what happens, and I would say this also is impactful with psychological pain too, is there's a thing called hypochondriasis. And uh hyperchondriasis is you get like almost like a little obsessive about the injury or the wound or the pain or the potential of it. And then you kind of start looking like, I'm feeling a little weird. Like, is I think something else has happened. You start getting really, like I used to tease some of my clients who had pain syndromes, and they would have a little bit of hypochondriasis. I was like, do not go on WebMD, because you're going to come in and tell me that you have toe cancer and sickle cell anemia and like, all these things. And I, it's because like the mind starts to become obsessive about trying to prevent like further pain, further injury, further harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes with like the things that might present a little bit like PTSD, but or people think that it might be PTSD. I'm not saying that it's hypochondriasis, but it's like in the vein of it. And like you're just
Yeah.
wanting to break them out of being fixated on the injury, the wound, or just even themselves. And because like the thing is, like pain is very transient, right? And so that's one of the things that, like if you're dealing with chronic pain syndromes, when people are focused on their work, or they're doing something that they like, or interacting with their grandkids, or the pain goes down. But then if they're
Mm-hmm.
going to lay in bed at night and you don't have any of those distractions, the pain gets substantially worse. You don't have the distractions of the day. And so the transient component is you just weren't fixated on it enough. right? And so there's actually medications where they they stimulate a little bit of dissociation so that the person doesn't fixate on it. But I would say it's a double-edged sword because it does make them more reactive and have a greater potential to have those kinds of reactions. And so like stimulating it with like a chemical substance, like a pharmaceutical, I've never seen it really have great long-term effects. But like short term, it might work a little bit, but like you start going down the dissociation rabbit hole, it can really snowball quite bad. So that idea of going back to how we were talking about, like using hypnotics, where you're going through and shifting people like out of that place that they're in where they're thinking that way, and you go, okay, come on, let's walk over to the park, and isn't this nice? And you take them to a little bit of a happier place internally, and then they shift out of it. The thing with the things that kind of like people call PTSD or kind of look PTSD-ish,
Yeah.
that's how I would treat it. Like
Yeah.
I don't
And
give it a name, and I don't say, let's be clear what we're doing.
conviction.
Just go, let's just try this and let's see what happens. And
And then you would do what, inhalations a few times a day with something like that, like
inhalation,
either
but
one
if we were
of them.
talking about that, I would have them take Palo Santo internally, like a couple of drops, maybe twice a
Oh,
day. And I would actually even augment with a little bay laurel. Like I like that idea.
oh,
And then, after maybe 15-20 minutes, they can inhale a little mugwort, or like in a week they can start working the mugwort. And that's not internal. They would just inhale it or do the arms and the
yeah.
legs. And over a period of time, you're walking them out of that potential of being in that place where they're super reactionary. And it's always interesting because, like, because I've dealt with some very severe cases of it. And at first they'll go, well, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I just had a good week. And then we'll be talking, and I was like, well, it's been 2 months now. And they're like, yeah, I'm a little bit better. They're always kind of waiting for that shoe to drop. And then there's just this day where they just go, yeah, I think it's not going to happen as much. Like, it starts like sinking in, like I'm starting to have consistent experiences that aren't like the way it used to be. And I noticed that even like uh, dealing with like traumatized animals, that they behave a particular way, they behave, and they keep behaving that way, they keep behaving that way, and you keep giving them like these better experiences, and you can see they're like, I don't know about that. And then one day they just hit this thing, boom, they flip a switch, and they just never go back. And in that area, people and the animals are not that different. They just, it's almost like if you have these little successes for a while, after a while you just go, oh, I can have a different experience. But the mind, especially the intellect, is like, no, this happened once, it's going to happen again, we have to prevent it. It's going to happen. If you talk to that person over there, they're probably going to do it to you. The mind just starts doing crazy things, and it's trying to avoid the pain, but it does it by inflicting a different kind of pain. And so um that idea of using something that is, got a bit of a hypnotic kind of effect, um, most people will work on. The ones that I will say where it doesn't work as much is when they're already really ingrained into like an automatic behavior and thinking. And so sometimes you do have to unwind some of that a bit. And so that again goes back to the treatment of the arms and legs with like vetiver and camphor and red healer and all those kinds of things, and just get blood flow going. But I was just hearing a story of somebody who they were just beginning to engage into something where they got a situation where they got traumatized, and as the situation was beginning to unfold, they said it felt like all the blood in my arms and legs just drained out of, my arms and legs. And that's kind of what dissociation is. It's poor
Mhm.
circulation in the arms and legs. And then it throws off how the brain functions, because the brain is getting, very, not the necessary blood going in, and it's not draining like it should. Because if your neck is really tight, it's hard for blood to drain out of your head. Like, gravity kind of allows for the blood to come out of your head. So if your neck is real tight, like, if you think about like when you get afraid or anxious, what happens is the neck tightens up. So then blood can't drain out of the head, which means fresh blood can go into the head like it should, because it's a container.
Mhm.
And if the container is full, you can't get enough blood in there to get the oxygen and the nutrients and all of that. And so it becomes this mm, uh, like cascading effect that just goes through the body and just causes all these like chain reactions.
Makes sense. And
Mhm.
then really treating all kinds of either OCD, PTSD, ADHD. I mean, each one of them is different. But even when you're looking at treating that, the oils would still be more powerful than doing energy, or the combination would be probably the strongest, right?
The thing that I like about the oils is you get energy and physical medicine at the same time.
Yeah.
Something physical
Mm-hmm.
that's hitting the body, and you get the energetics of it. And anytime
Yeah.
you combine energy with physical treatment, you tend to get better results. But then you can do a
Yeah.
little massage or a little chiropractic or a little energy work
Yeah.
or dialogue therapy or whatever, and it just
Yeah.
keeps it going deeper and deeper. And so
Mm-hmm.
um, I was talking to this guy who he's a CEO. He's like one of my old clients, and every once in a while we'll catch up and see each other again. And uh, he made this comment one time. He goes, because I've done all kinds of different therapies with him and in his business and all kinds of things. And he goes, out of all the things you've done, the thing that I always find very interesting is the oils. And he goes, you start talking about, meditation or energy work or this or that. And he said, some people, they really take to it, but there's a lot of resistance sometimes, especially in the corporate world. And he goes, but you can take the most, um, I'm trying to think of how he said it, the most adversarial person there is towards anything holistic, and you say, how about this? And they'll go, no, 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 nope. And he goes, and then you stick a bottle of something in their face and go, here, inhale this. And they go, I don't know. And then he goes, they'll always go, he goes,
Mm-hmm.
every time. He goes, it doesn't matter who it is, how stubborn they are about it. You stick a bottle of oil in front of their nose, they always inhale and they always have a response. And he said, out of everything, it's the one that crosses that barrier to people who maybe wouldn't be open to anything holistic. He said that's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that always crosses that line. Like, anything else, they're going to think you're a nut job, but you put something in front of them and in their face and nose. And part of it is we're wired for that. Like, part of your nervous system is gathering information like that. You're not trying to override something in the nervous system. You're utilizing what it does. And part of the thing with inhaling something, it's one of the quickest ways to shift the brain and the nervous system and the thought processes, because we're wired to do that. It's not that the plant is doing something unique. You know, if you think about like you walk into a place and you go, oh, look, you know, you're sitting in your car from the street and you look at a house and you go, look, this house is beautiful. And then you walk in and it smells like rotten eggs and you're like, ugh, I'm out of here. Like, ugh. Doesn't matter how beautiful it was to the eyes. Doesn't matter that, you know, it's got all whatever. Like soon as the nose smells that scent, like done, I'm out of here. And we're wired for that. Like
Yeah.
we're
And it,
utilizing a process in the body that does it anyway, and we're just saying, here's some designer medicine for you. Do with it what you want, and it, you know, it causes a shift.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, well, I got a few things. Going back to what you said earlier, that you were working on something that, you know, that shifts so many things and works on the body and on the mind when we talked more about the bay laurel. I'm also wondering if something like that can be beneficial for somebody who's been like a cancer patient. So,
Yeah, because it helps also
so,
diminish the degeneration in the body. Like it's, you
right.
know,
So,
it's
because
not
I
going to
was sitting through
necessarily
this.
treat the cancer itself, but it will keep the body from
No,
spinning out as much, and the effects of the chemo and the radiation and the surgery
so
and
that's,
being
and yeah,
bedridden
so
and yeah,
that's
yeah.
because I was sitting through something yesterday, talking about like cancer survivors, and the conversation was how they didn't find anything that has enough research. And I was sitting and I couldn't say anything, but I was that can help even the brain or the mind after chemo
Right,
and dealing with
right.
and I was like, yeah, I don't think I agree with that. Like, because there are, and that's when you were talking, I was like, that's because realistically we're not treating the cancer now we're treating the after effect of all the chemicals and everything else and the mental state and all the systems that been through whatever they've been through.
Yeah,
So then
post-cancer treatment, usually the psychological components that are the after effect of that is more neurological than psychological. And if you protect the nerves and you keep the nerves fortified and keep them from degenerating, I've had many cancer patients where they went through the treatment, and when they were done, they were like, "Yeah, that kind of sucked, but you know, oh well." Like they, you know, you're still changed by cancer. You know, I'm not diminishing that, but they weren't as devastated as a lot of people are, like after the fact. You know,
yeah,
and you know, they
if
went
they're
through
working with
hardcore.
somebody like you, yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
went through hardcore chemo and they went through hardcore radiation. And at one point, they might not think they were even going to live, and you know all those things. And still, by keeping the nervous system like fortified and strong and keeping it uh, like adapting, regenerating, they had a really good attitude all the way through. And then afterwards, they were like, "Okay, I guess I'm done." And you know. They were usually in a pretty good place, you know.
So then you were
Didn't
treating them
happen.
throughout and then
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. You know, we'd usually like when I had cancer patients, I'd usually would have a talk with them before. I'd talk to them about like things that were a concern during, and then afterwards, you know, how to maintain their new state of health and everything. But you know, it's case by case. But
Yeah.
you know, there's certain things that no matter what you have to address. So
Okay, thank you. And then what I actually wanted to ask, going to my original things, so if I have so somebody with a whiplash car accident, my issue is that yes, really, so mainly the issue that she has is the neck, muscles of the neck, and I mean obviously the trauma afterwards. My thing is, I mean, if I'm looking at oils, yes, I could have done so many things. There's pain suit, there's arnica, there's helichrysum. I could even do sage for relaxing some more. There's so many options. My issue is that she's not really open to that.
yeah,
and I've been treating her with, so she's putting something on her body that has some winter green. I'm like, okay, let's introduce some green and blue, but so I've been treating her with energy, which been okay, but she's also working at the same time, so she kind of keeps relapsing. She's also taking muscle relaxers, Robaxin, which I don't know, like, again, probably short term not so bad, but long term probably not ideal. Is there, and I've cleaned, you know, the spleen from the trauma. I've been working on the energy aspect of different things. Is there anything else that, I mean, I
So
can
you
try
wa-
and talk again about the oils, but
Yeah. So targets, regardless of how you're treating it, you target the neck, you target the diaphragm, you target
yes,
the kidneys and adrenals, and you target the digestive tract. Yeah.
I didn't do
A,
it.
a,
I'll do
a-
digestive, I'll do kidneys, okay.
yeah. A lot of that, you treat that and it helps the body unwind because the body has a trauma response to what happened. And the areas that tighten up are, there's the injury from the whiplash itself, but just trauma. Throat tightens up, the abdomen tightens up, the diaphragm tightens up, and then the kidneys and adrenals um, tighten up. And so protective webs become an issue. Like, you're trying to unwind. Um, you're trying to unwind the body out of fight flight. And even though the event happened so long ago, that's what you're doing. So even the protective webs, they tighten up when there's a trauma or projection or whatever. So the protective webs directly correspond to the level or degree of fight flight. And so even just cleaning those up and starting to relax them, that's part of unwinding something like this. But the issue also is over a period of time, there's muscle imbalances that happen because of the injury, and that's going to continue to increase over a period of time. So the more that you can unwind the diaphragm, deepen the breath, anytime you loosen the diaphragm, you're loosening up the spine, you're diminishing the potential for muscle imbalances. And so then over a period of time, you can like better treat the injuries. But the other thing that's going to settle in, I don't know how long ago that she had the accident.
3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah. So I'd say give her like another, means different from person to person, but I'd say another 3 or 4 weeks, she's going to start having fatigue problems. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but fatigue will start setting in. And so that will have to be addressed at some point as well. And so
And
the more that you unwind the things that we just talked about, the more that the fatigue is because the body's been in a sympathetic state for a prolonged period of time. So it's like she's running a marathon every day, even though she's sitting in a chair or just doing her work. And so the more that you can pull that person out of fight flight initially, you diminish the fatigue and you diminish the reactions in the body that are going to keep happening way after. I mean, sometimes they continue to happen for a couple of years. I mean, it's not like, oh, 3 weeks or a month has gone by, I'm starting to normalize. There's still reactions that are just like when you drop a rock into a pond and there's those ripples. The bigger the rock, the bigger the ripples, and the longer it goes on.
and then, and yeah, makes sense. And yeah, the only thing she does is salt baths. So she's open to that. And then realistically, really, you would, if you were to treat with oils, it would be like something like pain soothe to
Pain
kind of
soothe,
unwind.
pain relief, pain relief, psychogenic. I would use Paracelsus ointment. I would use uh, I would use something like tarragon or anise or
Yeah.
lemongrass internally. Lots of hyssop to unwind the neck, the diaphragm, and the spine. The thing that I like about the tarragon is that will also um, help with the stress in the gut. And so, you know, she
Okay.
might not have issues now. Usually the gut issues don't show up for a while, like
Yeah, I remember you mentioned
six
that.
6 months, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it's a year and a half. And the other thing that happens most times is again, it's usually like a year or two out is they'll develop high blood pressure. Yeah. And
Okay.
so sometimes migraine symptoms, but a lot of it is just things in that Mingmen, kidney, adrenal area. Like, so yeah, blood pressure issues, vertigo, migraines, you know, spinal issues, you know, because even if the injury originally is in the neck, it's just a matter of time before it manifests down in the low back. And, you know, it's
And
just, it's,
and it makes sense. And it makes sense that it's moving, right? Because he keeps telling me like she has pain here, she has pain there, and
Mhm.
my train of thought is like there's been a trauma, so the body's kind of adjusting. So the neck and the head is still.
Well, two things are happening there. So one is, you know, the initial accident, there was a lot of adrenaline for a little while, and you don't quite feel the things that are happening. And then you start calming down, and the depth of the injury starts settling in. So that's one. And then the other one is the muscle balances keep getting worse over a period of time. And so it will manifest like new areas of dysfunction or pain or imbalances as time goes by. And so it's just over a period of time. And you know,
And really for the fatigue, what would you like fatigue, or
um,
even like if somebody has like adrenal fatigue, which is I'm
yeah,
not even
I
really
give
understanding
them.
that condition.
Yeah, I would, you know, there's that adrenal support. It's
Oh
Timlenol,
yeah.
Reconsara, um, and little tiny bit of oregano. That's I've used that tried and true with whiplash patients. Yeah.
And adrenal fatigue would be really just that the person is just tired all the time because the adrenals are overworking. Is that
Um, yeah, they were in fight flight, and then over a period of time, like the low energy, the person starts producing low grade adrenaline for a while. And your body is trying to compensate for the inflammation in the body. And so it's just like a cascading effect. There's usually multiple factors. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And by the way, if with energy, if you're treating like muscles in the neck, my only option is like green, blue, violet, right? Because it's the neck, like you wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd get really surgical about how you treat things in the neck. Like look at some anatomy, sternocleidomastoid and the levator scapula,
Yes.
and then the trapezius are the three things you want to hit the most. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Okay. This is one I don't even. So manganese toxicity. The
What is
person
that?
has high manganese, so not magnesium, manganese
Mhm,
toxicity.
mhm,
First time I heard of it was yesterday.
mhm,
So she has high manganese, she has low iron, body tremors, and she's young, she's in her 40s. So body tremors, migraines, high blood pressure. She was dealing a little bit with depression. She has anxiety. She's tired. And she has a little bit of this like addiction, personality type of thing, like watching TV mindlessly for like hours. And
mhm,
she's taking like a bunch of different things. It's
mhm.
been going on since about November of last year. So there's so many things happening. I mean,
But they're
I
all
can see
very,
different systems
very
here.
overlapping. They're very, very overlapping. It's
Yes,
all
that's what I was
kidney,
thinking.
adrenals,
Yes,
Ming Men, and then the arms
yes,
and the legs. Yeah, it's all over.
yes. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then I figured the mind as well, right? There's something going on with the brain.
Well, the Ming Men also, part of what it does is it balances out the two sides of the brain.
Balance and
Right. And so
right.
if it's not functioning, they'll go into more of an obsessive state. Yeah.
So then what, this one would be open to different things. So what would I even, how would I even, like, where do I start with that? I'm treating it as like I can treat it with energy and put together, you know, different things, work on everything. But if I'm looking into oils or something else
So
that's
I'd start with doing an auric program with adrenal support. I'd do something. The adrenal support, even inhaling or applying topically, will help with some fatigue and refortifying the kidneys and improving kidney function and helping to regulate the adrenals. And then a lot of vetiver on the arms and legs. You know, I would start with that. It will need more, but I would start with that. And then, you know, because somebody like that, if you give them too many things, they'll get overwhelmed and they'll blow it off.
yes,
So give them
yes,
like a
yes.
taste of, okay, you can feel better. And then, you know, let them have a success and then go, would you like more? Like, and then, you know, like do it.
Yeah,
Because if you
I
try to
realized
treat
it
it
as I
all at
was
once,
giving.
it won't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but what is that? What is this thing even coming from? Like, is it
Oh, who
connected
knows? But it's
what
all
is
Ming Men, kidney, adrenals, and dissociation. Yeah.
okay? Because that's what also as she was talking, I'm like, okay, all of these systems are totally connecting together, and it's all okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome.
Okay.
And then go ahead, Troy, then Ralph.
Hey, Troy.
Hey Greg, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Okay. Well, it's ironic with my question that I started to actually doze off while I was waiting to speak, but I was gonna ask about like I'm just like super busy and like going all the time. And
Mhm.
normally, uh other than like Tuesday nights, I have a really hard time like choosing to let go or sit down or slow down. And
Mhm.
I just feel like I always have like more stuff to do. And I'm just curious, like what you would recommend as something that like I could maybe start as like a
So I would say a couple things about that. Like, you know, we can talk about things that will help you shift into a place of being able to spend a little bit of time, like more restful and everything. But I would say, you know, I have this issue sometimes as well. Like you have a lot on your plate and you're go, and it's like you almost have to create like a space where you have permission to like. Okay, you know, for me, it's for one, like I look at the things that I have to do, and this was a game changer for me. You might already be doing some form of it, but like I look at all the things that need to be done every day or every week, and I assign like a number value. You know, in the old days I used to write it down, but now I can just go, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, and a 4. Right? The ones are time sensitive and they absolutely have to be done. 2, they need to be done, but they're not as time sensitive. And then 3, it's like if you have extra time, you do it. And 4, in a perfect world, you do it, but it's usually more things you want to do rather than you need to do. So I don't even usually count the 4s. And you know, every day I might have a big list, but I'm like, I have to knock out the 1s. I have to not, you know, if I'm not doing the 2 today, I got to do it. When am I going to do the 2? Right. And then on that list, I include like downtime, like, you know, having a space of time where you rest and relax is important. And if you look at it from the point of view of like an athlete, like you look at an endurance athlete, like a long distance runner, a cyclist, a triathlete, you know, a hardcore swimmer, a tennis player. You know, in the old days, they would just go, 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 go. But as science started playing a more of a role to enhance performance, they spend as much time, if not more time, deeply resting than they do actually exercising and practicing. And the thing really became about recovery. Like if you can push really hard, that's great, but you also have to spend time in a recovery phase, you know, rest, and doesn't necessarily always mean sleep, but it's like, okay, even if I have things to do, if I've knocked out the ones, I know I have twos, but I have permission to be able to rest for a little bit. And, you know, almost setting up a little bit of a schedule, and it doesn't have to be the same all the time, but like, okay, I'm going to have time for, you know, just to rest, just time for myself, just to take a salt bath and sit out in the backyard and drink a cup of tea and watch the sun go down, or, you know, something like that. Is I would make recovery part of your daily task, you know, or maybe not daily tasks, but like weekly tasks. And it doesn't have to be every day. You know, there's some days in the week where I push no matter what, but then I'll have, you know, maybe a little bit of time set aside on a particular day or two. And it's like, when I'm in that rest mode, I mean, like I joke where I don't look at my phone or anything. I mean, I don't even have them out to get stimulated to look at my phone. I put them in a bag, they go away, and like I do not look at them until I'm back in work mode. And I would say create a little bit of an environment for a little bit of rest and repair. And then from there, things that help allow you to go into a parasympathetic state. And so Paracelsus, you know, even single oils like tarragon or benzoin or tuberose, you know, things like that. But I would say do that while you're relaxing. Like if I go, okay, you know, I've worked and usually I work till 8 every night, but tonight I'm going to be done at 5 and I'm just going to do a little extra resting. Um, right off the bat, I'll start inhaling the like tuberose or something. And I'm like, I'm going into chill mode. And when you start approaching things like that, especially when you have a busy schedule, you minimize burnout, you recover faster, you perform better, and there's not as much wear and tear like on the body, you know. And you know, for me, like I don't have this issue now, but there was a time where there was also like difficulties that I was having in different situations, and like even then I wouldn't I would not engage in even conversation talking about the, you know, if a friend called me up and said, hey, you know, that situation I heard, I was like, send me an email, I don't want to talk about it right now. Like I just like, I'm in rest mode, I am just resting. And the more that you do that, the more that your body will recover, and you know, it will reduce anxiety, it will make you feel better, your body will bounce back, you know, because go 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 is also a lot of sympathetic nervous system activity, or fight, you know, fight flight, but it's also just activity, and it's just your body doesn't get as much rest time. And you know, as you get older it will become a little bit more of an issue. And so I'd say develop like a habit now. And so, you know, like there's times where like I haven't scheduled, maybe I've scheduled a certain amount of like, okay, I'm going to have recovery time here on Monday or whatever, you know, just a few hours even. It doesn't have to be a whole day or anything. And every once in a while I was like, ugh, I need a little bit more than that. You know what I do? I rearrange my schedule. Like I'll just go, if I don't get rest right now, I'm going to pay a price where it will take me weeks to pull out of it. And the more you start getting rest, the more you'll recognize I'm going to that dark place right now. I'm starting to do my tailspin. And then when you almost, because it, like, in a way you're giving yourself permission, like, okay, I'm in rest mode right now, like I've given myself permission to rest here. And that's a thing for busy people, like you think, well, I'm awake, I could get some more stuff done. And you know recovery has to be on that list. And so once that happens, then the things that you start putting in place to help with resting and recovery and everything start to play more of a role. And so, just like you said, you had a little bit of time right here where you knew you were going to talk, but we were having a conversation. You said, look, like, I started falling asleep. Like, there, if you look at that situation, you really couldn't, like, step away and get stuff done because you were like going to be next in line. So in a way, you had permission not to do something for a little bit. So what happened is you're like, oh God, I'm tired. Like, ugh, it's sinking in. And I would say that time of a little bit more of that. Even like when Samantha and I travel, when we're in the car driving, and because even for us to get to the airport is about a 3-hour drive. um I don't look at my phone, I don't look at my emails, I don't look at anything. Every once in a while we might do emails in the car, but she's looking at it and I'm driving, so I'm in activity. But if I'm in the passenger seat, I have permission to take a nap, sleep, listen to music, contemplate whatever, but I don't think about work stuff. Like, I give myself that time of, I'm not going to think about work. I'm much more productive when I do that. I get way more done than if I was to constantly be doing things. And going back to the athletes, that's what they found. Like when athletes would, endurance athletes, when they would cut the amount of time that they trained and spend more time resting, their performance improved significantly. They were less prone to injuries and they were less prone to burnout. And I would say not that much different than being at work and being a dad and running around and doing all those things. It's just, it just has a different look, but it's the mechanics are the same. Like, they really are. And so I would just say carve out a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be every day. Like, for me, I give myself like 2 times in a week. I give myself like a little chunk of about 3 hours where I'm like, I just got to shut down. And you know sometimes I'll watch a movie, and most times I don't even watch a movie. Like, I just sit and uh sit outside and watch the dogs walk by as people walk their animals, and you know just just let myself be in a restful state. And if I do that, I can keep the effort up pretty intensely for a while. But if I use that time to perform, like, I get some stuff done, but I get burned out within a week or two. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, like, Paracelsus is good for helping you to rest. Tuberose, um, poplar is really good, like if there's a lot of stress involved. And this is what I'll say for me with that is, and it's just like inhaling it. Like, if I have a hard time transitioning into the restful state, I'll use poplar. But another one that's a little bit of a sleeper is benzoin. Like, if I inhale benzoin, sometimes it just helps me to, like, have a little bit of distance from all the stuff that I was doing. Um, and then I might, like, if I'm still having a hard time relaxing, I might take a little bit of spikenard internally, or a little vetiver, or the essential oil, the kava kava, I'll inhale it, take a little bit internally. um, you know, different things work at different times. And so I have like a little like core group of things that I use. But you know, it's the stuff that we always talk about all the time. It's not like it's some unique thing. It's like the things that work are usually the things that work. And so um there's been a couple of times where I just like, oh God, I can't break out of this. And I'll just rub like a bunch of spikenard on my feet. I rub a bunch of Paracelsus on my abdomen and back. And sometimes even that pain soothe, like I'll put it on my neck and shoulders, and I mean I'll conk out. No, oh, another one, blue healer, like blue healer on the body. It just calms everything down. And so you know, the ones that you know that are restful, like if you have given yourself permission to rest in some of these times and you put it on, you'll find that you just, you know, might not happen right off the bat because you know, I'm speaking personally here. Like for me, like when I first started doing this, I was like, yeah, I have permission to rest. But I'd sit there and go, but really, do I? Like I really didn't buy it at first. And then after I started having a little bit more rest, I was like, okay, this is starting to feel good. And sometimes what would happen is like I would take a Paracelsus bath, and you know, that really helps shift the body. And um, or if like I got a massage, I'd give the blend to the therapist and go, could you put some of this on me when you're, you know, working on my back? And sometimes it would be so relaxing that I was like, man, I gotta pull it together because I was also scheduled to work a little bit today. And you know, I don't have very much downtime, but when I do, I try to really maximize my rest in that time. But the key is that it's still just like I schedule out the things that I got to do on my to-do list. It is one of the things on my to-do list. When I was younger, it was never on my list. Like I had teach myself that it was okay. Yeah. And you know, you have a very busy schedule. You have, you know, you have a kid and um your schedule can be thrown curveballs very easily. So just like adjust it and adapt it as best you can.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, in a couple of days we'll talk and let me know how it goes.
Okay, will do.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And go ahead, Ralph and Denise.
Hey, Ralph.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. Got a question from this weekend. I'm going to be busy tomorrow night, so I wanted to get this one in.
Mhm.
You had given me a little bit of a stack at the end of Sunday afternoon for paradox and active imagination. My kit has not yet arrived. I think it's over the border by now, but it's not through the mail yet.
Okay.
Are there individual oils,
Yeah.
hopefully in my cigar
Yeah.
box that I can use for
Yes.
paradox? We'll start
I
with
love-
paradox.
I love that you use a cigar box. You're a man after my own heart. You should see my shelf is full of cigar boxes.
Handy little buggers.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like growing up, that was such a cool thing to keep my baseball cards in. And as I'm older, I just keep my adult versions of that.
Yep,
Okay, so which one is it? Paradox.
paradox.
Do you have tuberose, acacia, or even sandalwood?
At least one of those three.
Okay,
Tuberose, sandalwood,
or acacia.
acacia.
Mhm. And then what was the other one?
Active imagination.
Clary sage, Melissa, or neroli?
I got Melissa.
Perfect.
Neroli.
Yeah. And we're working on, we potentially might have a way to be able to get kits into Mexico a little bit faster. We're doing a test run here pretty shortly,
Mhm.
but we're hopefully gonna be able to expedite some of these things for you you know, because I know there's such a difficulty getting it in, but we're working on it.
It's just patience training.
Patience, but we still like to be able to get it to you quicker. So
Okay.
we think we have a way, but
Okay.
we're it's a theory right now, but we're about to do a little test run.
All right. That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Last one, you said clean the spleen or clean spleen is what I wrote down.
Okay.
Is there no, I didn't see that one on the list. So that's probably
That would just be like you're doing like a symptom oriented approach or
Okay.
just a functional approach. Um, um, I would say helichrysum or angelica or angelica seed, and inhale with your awareness on the spleen and back spleen.
inhale, aware front back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You know, as we're saying this, still do those, but I
Mhm.
kind of like the idea of if you have the tuberose,
Mm-hmm.
um, after you've done those, do a little tuberose on the front and back spleen as well.
Let
I
me
think it will be very soothing for you, like very,
do
very
a
soothing.
quick look here, and I'll tell you if I got tuberose on my list. Yes, I do. Okay.
Okay,
Two
perfect.
plus tuberose front and back.
Hmm.
Okay. Thanks.
And then go ahead, Denise, then Anne.
Hey, Denise.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
Hey, I woke up in a really good place today, but it's been a bit of a roller coaster. The biggest thing is I started to get like a lot of congestion and tightness around the top of my neck and shoulders, and at the almost the bottom of my, like in that spine area. So, what I'm wondering is could it be from the toxins from them pulling that tooth, or is it from the class and what we did?
So you're
And
getting
then
you're getting
I
it in
did
the neck and where else?
the neck and probably what you'd say below the base of my spine, but not the basic. I would above the basic, but low spine.
Oh, I see.
So low, and it could be like, I don't know, getting hit with a cold coming on. I don't know what it is. It's just, but it
Yeah,
really kind of took me out, especially from where I started
there's
today.
there's another round of COVID going around. It's not like the COVID of, you know, during the pandemic. Now it's just like a cold and flu. But I'd say how many people have we, like at least six, 5 or 6. Just in the last 48 hours, people have reached out saying that they've gotten COVID over the last 48 hours even. And so let me look at you here.
It could be toxins too from
You look
pulling
like
that tooth.
you're dealing with a virus. You do look like you're dealing with a virus. I'm not saying it's COVID, but I mean it's probably just your body might even fight it off, but you'll still have some achiness and uncomfortable areas. I would say, you know, if you have lemongrass, bay laurel, um, monarda,
I have
melissa.
all those. Well, yeah, I have all those.
Yeah,
Just
I'd have a party. Like I'd do a little bit of everything, and you know, the melissa, monarda, lemongrass, you know, rotate them and take them a little bit internally, and even the bay laurel, but inhale it. I'd put a little bay laurel on your chest. Um, you know, one of the things that I like to do sometimes, like the lemongrass, a lot of times will take some of the achiness out of the joints and things. But like if I feel like there might be a little bit of a cold or flu, I'll rub the bay laurel on the bottom of the feet and then on the like a drop or two in the joints, like behind the knee and the inside of the elbow, and you know, even a little drop or two on the inside of the armpit. And I think it helps quite substantially.
for the bay laurel, right?
Yeah, the Baylor.
And doing it at least like in the real sensitive parts of your like under your armpits.
Yeah, I
abs,
wouldn't get it
elbow,
up like deep in the pit. I just kind of get it like, you know,
I see.
like kind of close so that it opens up the lymph nodes. I mean, that's what you're trying to do is keep the lymph nodes decongested, and the bay laurel and taking the lemongrass internally will help that. And then the monarda and melissa will also help, but that whole combination is super antiviral too. And so,
Okay.
you know, because even if you end up getting sick, it usually will shorten the duration, shorten the intensity, and your body will be stronger afterwards rather than like in a depleted state.
And
Yeah. But
maybe
hopefully you
part
don't get sick. You know,
I
that's the,
know. Well, I was hoping I could catch you at least
yeah.
before we got to, maybe
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
And just as I was waiting to talk with you, I saw my ex-husband. He comes across the phone, and I swear to you, everything dropped right down to my solar plexus, because it's usually never good news if he calls.
Right.
Okay, so
And is everything okay or?
I doubt it. Okay. I doubt
Oh.
it, but I waited to talk to you first.
Oh, I
Okay?
see.
Because if I just really needed to talk to you, and because I never with him,
Definitely
as
take
you
some Melissa internally and inhale the Melissa before you talk to him. And then afterwards, just keep inhaling the Melissa a little bit. And it will, any sort of like fear or anxiety or anger, it will diminish it. And it will also improve the energy that bounces back and forth between both of you. And then afterwards, basically it calms down the generation of lower emotions. And so it will be, it still might be a little bit of a weird conversation, but it will minimize the impact of that weird conversation.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so
I
welcome.
really I needed you today.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Glad we got to talk.
Me too, truly.
Good.
And go ahead, Anne and Carol.
Hey, Ann.
Let's get you on. Oh yeah, you're unmuted. We should be able to hear you.
Hey.
I'm not sure if I was asked to speak. This is Carol. Did you?
Right after Anne. So yeah, so we'll get you talking right after Anne.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And go ahead, Anne, if we can hear you. You were unmuted. There you go. Let's try again. Go ahead. Yeah, we're not hearing you. If you want to try to type into the chat, I can read those over to Greg as well. And while you're typing into chat, also, we might be able to help troubleshoot you in another way, Anne. So I'm going to go ahead and have Carol, you go ahead, and then we'll take care of you, Anne. Go ahead, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Okay. Hello, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
You helped me when I first had a horrific auto accident, and I was in the hospital, and my brother is David Duke.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still recovering. It
Okay.
was a hideous accident where even though I was going about 25 miles an hour, what I hit was an inanimate object that did not
Sure.
move, a Tesla that was
Oh,
parked,
yeah.
and my car flipped over. So I
Oh,
am
wow.
still in trauma. My ribs were broken. My arm, my hand was cut in many, many, many places because I think it was a warmer night a couple months ago and my hand was out a window. So when the car went down on the side, on my side, it was crushed by the glass. So I am now doing some EMDR
Okay.
because the accident is still really, really present in my mind, the horror
Sure.
of it.
Yeah.
I'm still in a lot of pain and my ribs are still hurt. And I started acupuncture. So both of these things I've started in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Before that, I just didn't have the resources or the energy to try to find people. And so I was just kind of going along with people working on my hand so that it can move a little bit more.
Mhm.
But none of it really helping me psychically. It was, in fact, it
Sure.
was as hard as can be. And my hand is still, this is the part that I need some really a lot of help from you, was the hand is still extremely sensitive on a nervous system. Like I can't
Right.
touch my hand. It's
Okay.
better now, but it feels like my whole body is on fire. And so my nervous system is really hugely active. And I've been in a number of accidents. I've had a lot of pain,
Mhm.
but I've never had something that affects me so that almost my tummy is involved in the weird sort of nervous way that my body is reacting.
Okay.
That's the most important piece of what and
Okay.
pain and all the rest of it. But and I think I told you, but I'm certain you don't know. But many years I've been working with essential oils, but only on the aspect of their beauty. But I'm
Sure.
aware of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just don't work with them medically because it's a
Right.
whole
Right. Gotcha.
different. Yeah.
So, couple
Mm,
of things. Like, so
sure.
when you touch your hand, like just touching the hand, it starts to burn.
It's not burning. It's like it's too sensitive. It's like all the nerves are firing. It's a little better because I've had acupuncture even yesterday, and
Okay.
he used a laser on it, which was really helpful.
Yeah, cold lasers
Um,
are very nice.
yeah.
So, a couple of things, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to make it like too overwhelming, but the thing that I would like for a couple of reasons for
Mm-hmm.
you is, um, first I would say a body tonic, which is something that you would apply to the body, like so to the affected area. But I would even hit other areas like your neck and shoulders, but definitely your
Mm-hmm.
hand and arm. And it's a body
Mm-hmm.
tonic of Spanish sage. And for one, it'll calm down the sensory nerves because, like you
Okay.
said, like the issue is sometimes with an injury like this
Mm-hmm.
is that the nerve starts firing
Mm-hmm.
10, 20, 30 times more rapid than what is normal.
Yeah.
And so you're having a pain syndrome, but it's because of a hyperactive group of sensory nerves. And so
Right.
the thing is the sage will calm down the nerves. And then
Okay.
the sage also helps to stimulate parasympathetic activity, which is
Okay.
rest and repair, right?
Sure.
So it helps like calm the body down from the accident. And
Okay.
then the other thing is when you have that kind of reactivity in an injured area, it's sending so much information to the brain that part of what
Mm-hmm.
happens over a period of time is it causes brain fatigue. And
Yeah.
it's like if somebody, was, you're used to having 5 phone calls a day, and all of a sudden you had 500 phone calls a day. You're like, I could take them all, but like at the end of the day, you're just exhausted. Like your brain's doing that
Right.
around the clock. And
Right.
so Sage treats all of that. Like it calms the nervous system, it calms
Mm-hmm.
the sensory nerves, it puts your body into
Mm-hmm.
a bit more of a state of rest and repair. Sage is also considered a cure-all, so it will have like toning and balancing effects on things that you might not even be aware of, but it is
Mm-hmm.
the chaos that happened from the accident. It helps with the
Oh.
brain fatigue, and it's also a neuroprotective. Like, so it actually helps the nerves from not going into a state where they're becoming like degenerative. And so that hits that component quite well. The thing that I would be concerned about, and I'd say let's just treat that right off the bat and
Okay.
see. But the thing that, like when you have an injury site, there's going to be some scar tissue. And because of the nature of the injury, there is a lot of lactic acid and things, which is just what happens when an area gets injured.
Hmm.
Let's not even worry about that right now. Let's just calm
Okay.
down the nerves, calm
Right.
everything down. Now, for the component about the accident itself, like you said, like the
Mhm.
more psychological component.
Mhm.
We can address this a couple of different ways. We could do like a short form or a long form. If we do a
Okay.
short form, there's you know, we were just talking about PTSD a little bit ago.
Right.
And
Right. I
so
know. I
like
took
I
notes.
long form would be all four of those oils. And you would just sit and inhale. You don't even have to really work a pattern. You could just take long, slow, deep breaths as you're letting your body recover and just cycle through them. If you didn't want to go through that extensive of a treatment, go to the last one, the Splendor. And you know,
I don't
Splendor
know what that
is
is.
it's a
Splendor.
blend. It's a blend on the site.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And so it is made specifically for this kind of situation, like a PTSD kind of
Hmm.
situation. It calms down a different part of your nervous system and allows the mind to kind of calm down and let go of the traumatic event. And so
Uh-huh.
I would at least do those two. If there was an honorable mention, I like the idea of tarragon. And the reason the
Okay.
tarragon is, you know, even though the accident's been a little while, you're still are dealing with the effects of the accident, and there's still like shock and like a
Oh
kind of
yeah.
displacement that happens because your life is not normal right now. Your body is not normal. Nothing is
Right.
because you're recovering from this situation. And so you're constantly engaging because your body's going through this and you know the things that happened in life because of this. You're constantly engaging a kind of like stress response that is a very physiological, it's very physical. It's not your
Hmm.
emotions, it's not your mind. It affects the emotions and mind, but your body is in a stress state because of the injury. And so tarragon will help like calm the reaction of the body down, and it's also
Hmm.
very antispasmodic. And so it will help kind of loosen the body up, calm the body down,
Hmm.
help push the body into more of a rest and repair kind of mode. And in times where you're like, I should have been doing these things and I can't because I've been in this accident, it just helps your body's reaction to the difficulties. And so I think those three could be really super good for you. And the tarragon, you can inhale it, but if you feel up to it, I'd even put a couple drops in water and then like maybe once a day take it internally, but still inhale
Okay.
a bunch. And the
Okay.
combination should help you feel better. Like you know, sometimes when somebody has had like even if you were just walking down the street and you know you stepped on a rock or something and you rolled your ankle, you know,
Hmm.
and you know kind of sprained your ankle. You know, if you sit there and don't do anything, maybe the pain's like a 7 or 8. And then if you sit there and just let your body kind of relax for a minute, it'll go down to kind of like a 6. You know, but if
Hmm.
you have been trying to walk it off real quick, it'll stay at that 7 or 8. But if you start inhaling tarragon, like right when that all happens,
Okay.
it's just calming things down, but the pain will go from a 7 or an 8 down to like a 3. And it's just because you've calmed like the displacement or the chaotic nature of what happened to the body. You're
Hmm.
calming the body's response, and then the body starts going, I can calm down. Oh, I don't have to be on guard. You know, like the body starts like shifting gears because part of the issue is like when you have an injury and your body goes into fight flight, healing doesn't happen when your body's in that stress state. Like you have to be able to let the body rest so then the body goes, okay, I don't have to be on guard anymore. Like I'm safe. Like, you know, it was an accident, but it's not going to keep happening over and over again. Mentally and emotionally, you know that your body's not so sure. Like your body's like, I don't know, it happened yesterday, it might happen again today, right?
Uh-huh.
And so you keep calming the body down, and then after a while, the body goes, okay, you know, I think that was an isolated situation. I still don't completely believe it, but I'm starting to think that might be
Mm.
the case, right? And so the body starts resting and letting go, and then the body can go into a deeper, like healing process, and so you'll recover faster. Pain will go down, and your body will have more energy to heal because when you're in fight flight those healing processes don't get engaged because the body allocates its like resources for you to run or fight or protect itself.
Right.
And
Sure.
so if you're still in that state, which happens with these kinds of injuries, like if you're still in that state, your body takes a while before it starts to repair itself. And so we want to shut that down and get it into that place of rest and repair. So then the body starts like, repairing itself and calming down. And, because an accident is it causes a lot of chaos in the body for a while.
Mm-hmm. So when you talked about some blend, you called it Spinder. I don't know how to spell
Splendor,
it.
like SPLEND, I think it's OR, right?
Mhm.
OR, yeah.
And I don't know if this would help, but if you're able to open your chat box here in the Zoom, Robert posts the different oils that Greg talks about, and he did post Splendor. And so it's an easy way for you to find that Splendor oil and just find it directly on our website as well.
So that is a blend that you
Mhm.
created of different oils. And
Yeah,
then also go to what you talked about before for PTSD,
right.
because this is still,
Yeah, it's very much a
highly
PTSD
emotional.
situation. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
very much PTSD right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just okay. Well, Greg, thank you. And so
You're so
taking the tarragon inside, what
Mhm.
internally is good. And
Yeah.
you said in a few drops of water or something like that, and
Put
take
a
it
couple drops in water and then drink it.
in water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Good.
the Spanish sage body tonic. Like, so
Okay.
it's just like alcohol and witch hazel and Spanish sage. And I think that one
Uh-huh.
has some minerals in it to calm the body as well. And then you'll just rub it on the areas of the body that got injured.
Okay. So in other words, you've created a blend with these other tonics
Yes.
and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. I
And
really
if there's
appreciate your help. Uh-huh.
any questions, email us. Okay. Let us know.
Okay, wonderful. I will be
Okay.
in touch with these things, and I really appreciate your help
Yeah.
and appreciated what you gave me
Yeah.
before.
David's such a great guy. It's glad to
Yeah.
help.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Okay. Thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome.
Bye-bye.
And Anne was able to type into chat.
Okay.
And if we have time after Deborah, then Letty. So, and if we need to call her for time purposes, I don't know. So, and she wrote, I woke up last night and could hardly breathe. It was really frightening. I spent the rest of the night in the living room. This is probably allergy, but it's not been a problem earlier. We are getting our ducts worked cleaner, and I ordered a room purifier. I don't like taking allergy pills, etc. Is auric and somatic programming best?
I would just open up the chest, so the lungs. So whatever you have that's respiratory oriented, hyssop, bay laurel, any sort of eucalyptus, uh, even frankincense, like a spruce, pine. Any of the blends that are respiratory oriented, if she has the auric
She
program,
does. Mhm.
yeah. So pull out the pulmonary stress support. Like just do that. Open it up and don't even worry about following a pattern. Just start taking long, slow, deep breaths. And then will you also let us know, like by the time you go to bed tonight, will you let us know how your breathing is? Because I would feel more comfortable if you were breathing better going to bed. Let's just make sure that
And Anne, you have my number. Feel free to text me. No problem.
text Samantha and let her know. Yeah.
And then we'll go ahead and say, go ahead, Deborah, then Letty.
Hey, Miss Deborah.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
So I'm still kind of this is a long-term process, all of what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
So it's shifted like into I've always sort of had problems with eczema in my ear,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden within the last week it's become really intense. I've treated it a little bit on the externally with helichrysum, And I couldn't recall what you had said in the
So-
past.
A couple of things can work here. So one good oil that's really good for eczema is kunzia. Another oil that I don't talk about this a lot, but like in really severe or strong cases of eczema, you can actually use St. John's wort. But the downside of that is you need to not, like St. John's wort, if you put it on topically, you don't want to have a lot of exposure to the sun because it can turn the skin like a funky color, it goes eventually, goes away, but for really strong cases of eczema that's not really responding to treatment, St. John's wort can actually work. And so kunzia is utilized for eczema, and it has a pretty good track record. I mean, it doesn't always nail it, but it nails it 70-80% of the time. But sometimes palmarosa can be used. Usually palmarosa will work a little bit better if the eczema is like weeping. You know how like a little fluid will come out when you're treating it? Or I mean, just when it's there. Palmarosa will work a little bit better for that one. But do you have any of those?
I do not. I might have the Palmarosa from a class or something, but
How
those
about
are ones.
spikenard? Do you have spikenard?
Oh, I have spikenard for sure.
Why don't you try throwing some spikenard on it?
Okay, so can I, because I have really tiny canals, and what happens is this gets so inflamed that it starts to close up. And then what happens because it's closed up is I get an infection.
Right.
So can I just lightly put it in the spikenard in the early parts of the entrance to the canal there?
Yeah. Put it on a Q-tip and then like stick it in and then just swab it around. But I would say let's have you also do you have bay laurel?
I do. Yes.
Take like 2 or 3 drops like in water, but do it like 3 times a day for like the next 2 to 3 days. And the reason being that it'll open up the lymph nodes. If there's any sort of bacterial thing going on, it will help that. It will help open things up a little bit. It would even help the sinuses a bit, because anytime you have an ear thing, you also kind of look at sinus stuff as well. Even though you might not have mucus here, there it's like too connected. And so and vice versa. Like sometimes when there's really chronic sinus stuff, you treat the ears and it opens up the sinuses. And so then the other thing is I would take a little bit of the bay laurel, and this isn't so much for the eczema, but just for opening up the sinuses and the ears. Take a little bit of the bay laurel and put some on your finger, and then rub back and forth on the roof of your mouth.
I like that.
Yeah, because like that will stimulate lymphatic movement and it will open up the nose, and a lot of times it will start to open up the ears. And so the combination of that should be helpful, but give it like 36 hours. And if it's not moving in the right direction, reach out.
Okay, so just sort of another symptom that I forgot about is I don't have puffy eyes, but along with this, I've been having puffy eyes in the morning.
That's probably your sinuses. Yeah. I mean, it could be sinuses. It could be, so, I mean, you could put like a little bit of like vetiver or marjoram, something like relaxing, and put it on the fingertips and then rub the sides, your temples, and it opens things up enough to where the puffiness a lot of times will go away.
Okay, I like that too. Now I'm taking a couple of drops of clove in water.
Yeah.
Is that in conflict?
Yep. No.
No. Okay. Terrific. And should I space them out, the clove and the bay laurel, when I'm taking them?
A couple minutes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, super. What's funny is I was calling because I felt the intuition that I needed Bay Laurel right now, because I used to take Bay
Oh,
Laurel
tremendous.
all the time.
Yeah, check you
And-
out.
Yeah, I'm super excited that I just was so, I'm channeling you.
Yeah, there you
Jack.
go. Very good.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
You're
Oh,
saying.
and one other thing, did I think about having another treatment at all for kind of a chronic healing at some point? Because I feel like, I can feel the constriction and I can palpate
Oh
still
yeah,
the
sure.
parathyroid.
Text me. Yeah, text me. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah. You bet.
812C or
We should probably jump over.
Okay.
Who's the
it's Letty.
Letty? Tell her to text you and Yeah.
And if you sent us a question in chat, please email that to us. I will get those relayed over to Greg. And great session tonight, guys.